Let's go back overseas now because Benjamin Netanyahu's tanks have moved into the centre of Rafah, suggesting a full-scale invasion could be being planned as we speak. This is despite protestations from the international community and Joe Biden himself saying, do not proceed. And this comes as Palestinians claim an Israeli airstrike has targeted another tent city in Rafah. Joining me live is independent journalist and author of The Palestine Laboratory, Antony Loewenstein, who was based in East Jerusalem between 2016 and 2020. Antony, great to see you once again. We see another mistake being made in Rafah, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, and Israel investigating itself. We also, I think, are seeing more intemperate remarks from world leaders such as Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron. What do you think's happening here?
These are not mistakes, is the first thing that's worth saying. And it's important to look back at how often Israel claims to be making so-called mistakes and then to investigate itself. You know, the reason in the last week or so, the International Criminal Court is looking for the arrest warrants of 3 Hamas leaders and Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, the defense minister in Israel, is because they do not believe that Israel has a robust legal system to investigate themselves. That is the real reason why the ICC believes, in my view correctly, that they need to try to prosecute Israeli leaders because they won't do it themselves. The idea that what we're seeing in Rafah is accidental, there are no red lines. I mean, this is important to note. We hear in your introduction, you mentioned that there's growing intemperate language. That is true from Australia, from the US. But ultimately, the US is still sending weapons. The US, there are no red lines, according to Joe Biden. He talks about red lines, but ultimately there is nothing here which is stopping Israel, despite the fact that there is massive international outrage over the fact that there are now probably 40 or 45,000 Palestinians killed, the vast majority of whom are civilians. And alongside that, just last week, the US intelligence, I mean, you should always treat that with a bit of skepticism, but essentially they said that they thought that around 35% of Hamas fighters had been killed. Now, assuming that's true, in nearly 8 months, what does that tell you about Israel's war strategy and aims? It's failed miserably, and now we're still in a situation, 8 months in, where the Israeli policy is about revenge. And you know that because you have countless Israeli soldiers still posting on TikTok literally every day, talking in that language. That is what this is for them, despite the fact that the war goals of Israel has not been met at all.
The stated intention from Netanyahu, though, is to defeat Hamas and to wipe out those fighters. Is it a fair assumption that those Hamas fighters would be in Rafah? And they are legitimate targets, aren't they?
I mean, there are some Hamas fighters that almost certainly are in Rafah, but there are Hamas fighters and Hamas members all through Gaza. I mean, it's interesting in the last month or so, after Israel had withdrawn from many parts of northern Gaza, fighting started again. It's a classic insurgency where Israel did not have any troops on the ground there and Hamas reappeared. The issue is not here to defend Hamas by any means. The issue is that Israel's war goals are literally impossible. And anyone who knows insurgency from Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam will tell you that if you kill huge numbers of people, in fact, you are encouraging a greater insurgency, which is exactly what's happening. There are many people in Gaza, civilians, including friends of mine who are still there, who loathe Hamas. Some support them and some don't. It's obviously a complicated picture. But the fact of the matter is that at the moment, the damage that is being caused in Gaza is being caused by Israeli actions, Israeli bombs. I mean, seeing charred bodies of children that have been murdered, the idea that Israel claims that's an accident, these are not accidents. You know, it's one of the things that's been so clear in the last 8 months is that mass slaughter is the point. Now, it might be hard to hear that, but the idea of killing huge amounts of Palestinians in the goal to, frankly, ethnically cleanse Gaza, not to kill every single Palestinian, but to make Gaza unlivable. And in that goal, it's arguably been achieved because vast parts of Gaza are no longer livable at all. There's no infrastructure, no buildings, no water access, no medical care. Hospitals have all been destroyed. That's the reality now. And where does that leave Palestinians who stay there, the vast majority of whom cannot leave? They either live in tent cities indefinitely. And what is that going to breed? Greater extremism. You know, Laura, ultimately, without massive international pressure, sanctions and arms embargoes, which some nations, including in the West, are talking about. I noted in the last few days, Belgium, which is a relatively small European country, is talking about putting on sanctions. Now, Belgium is not a massive global power, but that is where this debate needs to go, because there are no red lines on what Israel is doing in Gaza, and there will not be. And by the way, even in a crazy, insane way, in a self-interested position for Biden, this is hugely damaging his chances of re-election. Massive amounts of young Americans, Jewish, non-Jewish, Muslim, non-Muslim, Black, are saying in poll after poll that they are so disgusted with Biden's blind support and arming of Israel, they will not vote for him come November. They might not vote for Trump, but they might sit out. So even in a self-interested way, it's utterly self-defeating for the US.
Antony, I wish we had more time, but we'll have to leave it there for today. We always require a longer conversation, but we thank you for giving us your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Laura.